next episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about Where Nightmares Begin by Glenn Rolfe. Where Nightmares Begin. This is from Sam Hain Publishing, and this is a collection of 3 novellas from Mr. Glenn Rolfe. So the first is Abram's Bridge, and it's the story of Lil Ron. That's L-I''L, Lil Ron. He lives in a small town, and one day when he goes underneath Abram's Bridge, because he dropped his MP3 player, he meets Sweet Kate, who happens to be a ghost. And so Lil Ron starts digging into what happened to Sweet Kate. She tells him she was murdered, but she doesn't actually know who did it. So Lil Ron starts digging into the past and dredging up the secrets of his small town and his family and friends and all of that. And this just builds and builds as things crash together, the past and the present. Then next we have Boomtown, and it's a small town where years and years and years and years ago there was a UFO sighting, and these booms, not quite earthquakes, but seismic events. And now present day, they're starting again. People are wondering if this has to do with the UFO sighting from decades ago. And we have young girl Kim Jenner and her friend slash crush, Bradley Carmichael. These are our 2 main characters. It's not even a matter of trying to figure out what's going on. They just sort of become caught up in events. This blue slime has been coming up out of the ground, and Brady comes in contact with it, and it does something to him, and at the same time people are disappearing and all sorts of stuff going on. And Kim and Brady, again, trying to figure out exactly what's happening. And then finally we have Things We Fear, and this is about Emily Young. She's a young school teacher, and it's the end of the school year, and she's going to maybe start a relationship with a nice young man named Aaron Jackson. He was, what do they call him? An ed tech who worked in her classroom. And he spends his summers at the beach because he's deathly afraid of water because of something that happened to him when he was a kid, and he's trying to confront his fear. So he spends his summers at the beach. Emily's going to come visit him, but there's a crazy psycho killer rapist guy who's got his sights set on Emily, and he's coming for her. And that's the setup for Things We Fear. So, all right, Abram's Bridge has the feel of a coming-of-age story. It's got some pretty decent characters. Lil Ron, he's got a tough home life. His mother has left him and his dad. His dad's taken to drinking way too much. They live with Lil Ron's grandmother, his father's mother, and she's a very strict religious woman. So when Lil Ron meets Sweet Kate, it's kind of nice for him, even though she's a poor ghost. He feels that he has a friend, and he wants to know what happened to her and make things right for her. It's an interesting mystery, and I thought I knew where it was going, but then the story kind of zigs and zags. So there are some surprises. There's some other characters that I haven't mentioned, and they're all relatively well developed. My biggest problem with this particular story is at the end there's the kind of coincidence that always annoys me. And I'm not going to say what it is because you should read it and decide for yourself. But there is something that happens at the end, and it's the kind of thing that just makes me go, really? What are the chances that this is the way things happened? Um, but aside from that, it's an enjoyable story. Um, Again, good characters. The way it goes, those twists and turns, um, may keep you guessing. And one of the things Glenn Rolfe does, and I think it's going to apply to all of these stories, is no one is safe. Glenn Rolfe seems to have no fear when it comes to um, perhaps doing away with characters that you've come to like. So that's Abram's Bridge, essentially. Not a bad little coming of age story, kind of coming of age story. That's the way I see it anyway. Boomtown, on the other hand, uh, may have that coming of age feel again. I think that's just something that comes to my mind when you have these young teen or preteen main characters, like you do with Abram's Bridge and now Boomtown. But there's a lot more, I think, going on in Boomtown, even though it's maybe around the same number of characters. What's happening here is a bigger story. As I said, you have Kim Jenner and her best friend Brady Carmichael, and they both are crushing on the other, but haven't admitted it to the other yet. Um, but you've got Kim's sister, and you've got all these other characters, couple old guys, couple old drunks at the bar, the guy that runs the antique shop, some other folks, and they're all being, it's all coming down to these booms that are happening again. At the beginning of the story, it starts with a newscast talking about the booms and how it happened 30 years ago. Yeah, checking the back of the book. 30 years ago, when this UFO was spotted and these booms happened, some people speculated that these aliens came and took something out of the earth, but there are other people that think maybe they put something into the earth. And now, 30 years later, whatever they put into the earth is coming out. Um, and as I said, there's this weird blue stuff, this blue slime. It it can infect people, it can infect objects. Um, there's a character, not going to get into details, but one character just sort of is just covered in it, sort of controlled by it. His entire abode is just covered in this blue slime. It's really kind of disgusting. I do question Brady Carmichael comes in contact with the blue slime and has a completely different reaction to what seems to be the case when other people come in contact with it. Um, so that's an interesting element. Not sure why he would have a different reaction, but um, so Brady is just really curious about what this stuff is, but certain events lead to Kim and Brady and some other people sort of coming together in a big climax of the story. Um, I like this one a little bit better than Abram's Bridge. The characters to me were a little more interesting. The story itself a little bigger, and I could actually see this. I could see Boomtown as um, almost a prologue to a bigger story. We have these events, what happens in this story, and I could see that being the launching pad for something even bigger, which wouldn't be a bad thing. Then we come to Things We Fear, which is my favorite story in this book. Again, really nice characters. We get a lot of character development in this, a much smaller cast. Our main cast is, of course, Emily Young, Aaron Jackson, the crazy person who well, it's revealed pretty early in the story, but I'm not going to tell you who it is yet. You got to find out for yourself. You've got the old couple that rents a cottage to Aaron when he goes and spends the summer at the beach, um, and a few other people. But definitely, I think a smaller cast than the other stories, and so maybe because of that, there's a little more character development. We get into Aaron Jackson and why he has this fear of the water, and things, and then Emily Young, and we learn about her and her past relationships and why she might be a little nervous about getting into a relationship with Aaron, even though she likes him. And I really like that. Uh, Again, this story, I don't. I'm tempted to say it's a little slower than the other two, but that's not quite true. It just has a different pace because there's some crazy stuff that goes on, and yet there are more, I think, quiet moments, character moments, which I really enjoy. Um, Again, Glenn Rolfe will do anything to anybody in his stories, I think. So it's tough to get attached to people because you never know who's going to make it, who's not going to make it. Now, personally, I felt that I could see Glenn Rolfe's growth as a writer. It just feels to me that his style, his storytelling ability grows throughout each story, um, which could be completely wrong. Just because these stories were published in a certain order doesn't mean they were written in that order. Um, but that's how I felt. It feels like Things We Fear is the strongest story, and the most well written story. Abrams Bridge being the first in this collection just feels a little weaker as far as writing style goes than Boomtown and then Things We Fear. But they're all worth reading and enjoyable. It's nice to read a little more Glenn Rolfe. And like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing a bigger Boomtown story. The other two are very self-contained. Really, no place for them to go. They're not that Boomtown isn't self-contained, but it is open-ended, I suppose. Does that contradict saying it's self-contained? I mean, you can read it, and that's all you need, but there could be more, um, which I think would be kind of cool. So, with all of that being said, certainly not my greatest drawings for ratings here. As always, it does have something to do with what's in the story. One of the stories, anyway. But so I give Where Nightmares Begin 3.5 out of 5 purple bikinis. Horribly drawn purple bikinis. But 3.5 out of 5. Just some entertaining stories here. Not a bad way to spend an evening sitting down reading it, and as a study, it is interesting to see that progression of a writer. So there you have it. That's Where Nightmares Begin by Glenn Rolfe from Sam Hain Publishing. A nice little trio of tales of terror. Um, so let's see. As always, I will have a link or a couple links for the book in the description below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Please, comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning so we don't ruin any of the stories for anyone who might not have read it yet. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I think that covers it. So this has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.